On July 28, 1915, an American warship dropped its anchor at Port-au-Prince. On board were hundreds of American soldiers on an official mission to reestablish peace and order in Haiti. In reality, the mission had other objectives: to occupy the country and lay hands on its public finances for the benefit of New York's banking establishment. Over 19 years of occupation, massacres, rapes, and numerous other forms of abuse against the Haitian population became common. Upon arrival, the Marines met no resistance, save one modest soldier by the name of Pierre Sully, who wanted to defend his country and refused to obey the Marines when they ordered him to lay down his weapon and leave the vicinity. He was killed in cold blood. William Caperton, the American admiral in charge of the operation, began an immediate deployment of troops around the capital, first occupying strategic points and symbolic buildings, barracks, ports, custom houses, tax offices, the presidential palace, ministries, and courthouses. Starting in August 1915, the occupation spread throughout all port cities of the country. Soon, the Americans took total control of the state. The President of the Senate, Philippe Sud d'Artignave, accepted to be enthroned by the occupying power as the titular President of the Republic. American businesses arrived on the island in the wake of the military and claimed the country's meager resources. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was at that time the Assistant Secretary of the American Marine Corps, drafted a new constitution for the Haitian state. This was a diplomatically liberal constitution which would henceforth allow foreigners the right to own land in Haiti, a right that had been forbidden since 1804 and the proclamation of Haiti's independence by Jean-Jacques Dessalines. From the onset, the Haitian deputies refused to ratify this new constitution. In response, the American soldiers penetrated the halls of the National Assembly and chased out the recalcitrant members of Parliament at gunpoint, and forced the voting and ratification of their constitution. An American administrator, called a counselor, would be placed at the head of each of the nation's administrations. The puppet Haitian government set up by the occupying forces had no real power at all. The American counselors would make every decision, taking firm, direct control over the collection of revenue as well as the final word on every expenditure. They imposed martial law over the entire country. The press was under strict censorship, and anyone who dared to criticize would be thrown into prison. From the very start of the occupation, the Americans met determined resistance on the part of the Cacos, a movement led by Charlemagne Perrault. In 1918, a Cacos uprising was crushed by the Americans. There were thousands of victims. Abuse and excessive violence of all kinds was committed by the American troops. The civil rights activist James Weldon Johnson visited Haiti and wrote a report condemning the, quote, economic corruption, forced labor, censorship of the press, blatant racism, and wanton violence committed in Haiti under the American occupation, end quote. In this unspeakably violent photo, we see an American soldier in the process of executing a Cacos rebel. His hands were cut off before he was killed. On the ground lies the body of another man who was probably just executed. As shocking as this may seem, the American soldiers had full authority down from their hierarchy to kill Haitians, and they held no quarter. The racism of certain American politicians of that era was evident. Robert Lansing, the American Secretary of State during the first years of the occupation, felt that it was absolutely necessary to intervene in Haiti because its black population was ungovernable with an inherent tendency to savagery. To better understand the context in which this occupation occurred, let's briefly review the events that led up to it. Between 1911 and 1915, Haiti was stuck in an unprecedented political crisis. The country changed presidents 6 times in only 4 years. Political assassinations and forced exile had become the norm. On February 22, 1915, Villebrun Guillaume Sam was elected president of the Republic. From the moment he came to power, he was confronted by the opposition of the revolutionary leader Rosalvo Bobo, former Minister of the Interior and a sworn enemy of the new president. In order to consolidate his power and impose his pro-American policy, the new president persecuted his political opponents, throwing them in prison. By the end of April 1915, he had imprisoned dozens of personalities hostile to his policies. But his situation became fragile because he provoked so much opposition. An important popular uprising succeeded in overthrowing his government. Yet, he maintained control of the situation and had 167 political prisoners executed, most of them from rich mulatto families who had links with the very influential German community in Haiti. The former president, Horace Zamor, one of his key opponents, was also executed. On the morning of July 26, 1915, the presidential palace was attacked. The president fled and took refuge inside the French embassy. An enraged crowd rioted in front of the embassy and demanded that Villebrun Guillaume Sam be delivered into their hands. They ultimately succeeded in invading the building, seizing the president, dragging him outside where he was massacred. His body was displayed by the crowd throughout the streets of the capital. The very next day after this drama, the American troops invaded the country. The president Villebrun Guillaume Sam played right into the Americans' game by persecuting the German community in Haiti. The Americans were very preoccupied with the role played by the Germans on the island and suspected that they were a threat to American interests. Indeed, by the beginning of the 20th century, the tiny German community in Haiti had amassed considerable economic power. It controlled a large part of the Haitian economy. But the German community was more integrated into the Haitian society than other Western communities. Some Germans had married Haitian women in order to find a loophole around the constitutional law that forbade foreigners from owning land in Haiti. German immigrants nevertheless maintained tight relationships with their home country, and the Americans suspected them of being part of a spy ring that Germany had set up in Haiti. In 1918, under the influence of the Americans, Haitian President Sud Dartignav declared war on Germany and confiscated all the wealth of the Germans living on the island. He also imprisoned a number of them, including prominent merchants and businessmen. At the end of the First World War, a number of Germans were deported from the country and had their possessions confiscated. The American strategy for maintaining control over the region explains many of the political reasons behind their invasion of the island. But the key reason was much deeper. There was another critical factor that pushed the United States to invade Haiti. That factor was an American bank, the National City Bank, ancestor of today's Citigroup. In taking control of the country's finances, the Americans could now systematically siphon off the country's revenue into a direct pipeline to New York bankers. Before the American occupation, the French bankers from the Banque Crédit Industriel et Commercial, CIC, controlled Haiti's national treasure from the comfort of Paris. The French bankers were merciless and even took commissions, imposed interest penalties, and excessive operation fees. The Americans planned to push out the French in order to wrestle from them the control over Haiti's finances. By the year 1920, Citibank had succeeded in acquiring the totality of the shares of the Haitian National Bank, and thanks to Haiti's debt, they achieved their greatest profits for the entire decade of the 1920s. One of the commanders of the American armed forces in Haiti was General Smedley Butler, a mercenary at the service of international finance, with a background in destabilizing foreign nations. His written memoir entitled War is a Racket was published in 1935, and in it he makes some shocking declarations. I spent 33 years and 4 months on active duty, and during that period I spent the majority of my time as a hired hand for the business world, for Wall Street, for the bankers. Simply put, I was a racketeer, a gangster working for capitalism. I helped to make Haiti and Cuba a congenial place for the men of National Citibank to do business and make profit. But the true craftsman and architect of the American occupation of Haiti was Roger Farman, a powerful lobbyist from the National Citibank. He had the ear of America's most powerful policymakers. It was he who earlier had advised the pillage of Haiti's gold resources by the American Marines. It was in 1914, a year before the invasion, and several American soldiers entered the National Bank of Haiti and seized a quantity of gold worth $500,000 at the time, and made their way to New York, where the bounty was deposited in a Wall Street bank. The Haitian state denounced international banditry, a scandal, but the Americans justified the holdup, claiming that U.S. interests were in grave danger. In the spirit of efficiency, the Americans built some infrastructure in the country, like the building of several major roads and public buildings, but using scandalous methods. They would arbitrarily evict local people from their land and imposed forced hard labor, close to slavery. Soldiers would tie the locals by rope and force them to work without compensation, gunning down anyone who would attempt to flee. Many farmers were chased from their land, joining the guerrilla movement alongside the Cacos. Others fled to Cuba or the Dominican Republic. In 1933, President Stenio Vincent came to power in opposition to the occupation. The presence of the American military in Haiti continued to provoke the hostility of the population. Any revolt was repressed with deadly force. Artists and writers began to take the front lines, denouncing the occupation and the brutality of the Marines. On August 7, 1933, Franklin Roosevelt, the newly elected President of the United States, signed a treaty that agreed to the retreat of the American troops, officially ending the occupation. Visiting Haiti in July 1934, the American president reaffirmed the agreement of disengagement of the United States in Haiti, but the last contingent of American Marines didn't leave the country until August 15, 1934, and America continued to maintain its influence on Haiti's finances until as late as 1947. Those 19 years of occupation, as well as the heavy human toll, the economic ravages it caused, have also contributed to plunging the country into a chaos for which Haitians pay the price to this very day.